What's up, guys? We're back with the 13th BioLayne video log. I know it's been well over a month since my last one, and I'm really sorry about that. Things have been crazy busy. As some of you know, I went to Columbus, as Isabel and I usually do, for the Arnold Classic. I had the privilege of not only working the Bodybuilding.com booth, in fact, it was pretty cool. On Sunday, I was signing autographs at the same station that Phil Heath was signing autographs at the day before, so that's kind of neat. Not sure I deserve my own station at the Bodybuilding.com booth at the Arnold, but it was pretty cool. I met a lot of people, a lot of supporters, a lot of people who watch the video log, and very cool. Thank you guys for stopping by. It was a ton of fun. Not only did I get to do that, as many of you know, I was one of the broadcasters for the webcast of the Arnold, and I guess one of the coolest parts was Lonnie Tepper announcing my name on stage, you know, along with Bob Ciccarillo and Dan Solomon, my co-hosts, saying that, you know, they're backstage announcing the show. But anyway, so in kind of a vain way, getting my name announced on the Arnold Classic stage, I think that's pretty wild. That's pretty wild. My wife was texting me. She was out in the audience. She's like, "Did you hear that? Did you hear that?" So that was really cool. And just been crazy busy since I got back, trying to catch up on work. So obviously I owe you guys a video log, and I've been saying I'm going to do it, and I am going to do it. So here it is. This video log is about extremism in the fitness industry, and how we are a culture, or have become a culture, of extremists. And I don't think the fitness industry is necessarily different from maybe anything else. I mean, politics is now a culture of extremism. A lot of stuff is gone, you know, divergent extremism. It's a video on basically cautioning you against that. It kind of ties in with the video about how to prevent becoming a zealot. I was doing an interview for John Meadows' website that should be up relatively soon, and we were talking about meal frequency and discussing meal frequency. And as many of you know, I think eating too frequently is bad, and I think eating too infrequently is suboptimal as well, in terms of optimizing body composition and muscle mass. And that's one thing we always need to keep in mind. Whenever I'm giving recommendations, I'm talking about what's optimal. A lot of people will come to me and say, "Hey Layne, you know, do I need this, or do I need that? Do I really need to eat 5 times a day? Do I really need to take creatine?" Well, no, you don't need it, but is it useful? Does it help optimize your results? Well, yeah, maybe, you know, and based on this data. So don't ever ask, "Do I need this?" because it's the wrong question, and it's not the question you intend to ask anyway, okay? So optimal, not need. That's what you're asking. Anyway, that mini rant is over now. And but this extremism, talking about meal frequency, you know, back in the day, or even now, you still got, you know, kind of the bro camp who tells you, you know, you need to eat 8 to 10 times per day, and that will help you burn fat because it stokes the metabolic fire. Eat every 2 to 3 hours because it'll keep a gradual drip of amino acids and you will always be anabolic. Well, that's wrong. The studies on meal frequency and caloric output and thermogenesis is very clear that there's basically no difference. If anything, eating too frequently is a negative thing for fat loss. And so that, you know, that's kind of BS. And also in terms of anabolism, the research from our lab demonstrated that if you eat too frequently, you get what actually is called protein synthetic refractoriness. Basically meaning that eating too frequently actually can impair the anabolic response. It's actually one of the reasons I'm not a huge fan of casein, because I actually think a gradual kind of steady stream of amino acids is suboptimal. I think, you know, bolusing your meals is a better way. But so you had that camp, And that was kind of the thing. And then you've got the counterculture camp that comes out that says, hey, you just need to eat 1 time a day. You know, 1 time a day is optimal. It's what our Paleolithic, you know, ancestors survived on, you know, so we're meant for that. Well, one, that's not entirely true. They kind of ate when they could. A lot of times it was 1 time a day, but if they got opportunities to eat 3 or 4 times a day, they did that as well. And I always have a major problem with this idea that we need to be doing what our ancestors adapted on, because that must be optimal. Last time I checked, cavemen weren't trying to get as jacked and shredded as possible. That's just me, but that's the last time I checked. They were more worried about surviving. And so they did a lot of things that probably were suboptimal in terms of body composition. But in terms of survival, certainly might have been more optimal. So I think that's a really important factor to take into account. And in any case, the data doesn't support that that's optimal for muscle mass. I've talked about my research on protein distribution that made a lot of people very angry. I always find it interesting when people get angry at me. Don't be angry at me. Be angry at the data. I am not your enemy. I am just telling you what the data says. You know, the cool thing about science is it's true whether you believe it or not. Think about that for a minute. It's true whether you believe it or not. So don't be mad at me, be mad at the data, all right? So stop sending me the hate mail, stop posting hateful comments on my YouTube. I'm saying this even though I know you won't, so I'm prepared. And actually, in terms of meal frequency, there was a study that just came out by Stuart Phillips, and a lot of the feedback I got in my protein distribution research was, well, it was in rats, so it doesn't matter, blah, 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 blah. You know, this coming from people who have never done a day of research in their life, have no idea about, you know, what models are appropriate for protein synthesis, and that the rat model is an extremely validated model of protein metabolism and has been supported over and over and over again with human data. And that you can do a lot of stuff in rats that you can't do in humans. You can get them to eat exactly what you want for a long period of time. And you can measure their response over a greater proportion of their lifespan. 6 weeks out of a human's life is not very significant. 6 weeks out of a rat's life is a very significant portion of time. So you get to see a better microcosm of how that works over a longer period of time with them. Now that said, there was a recent human study that came out from from Australia, but also in collaboration with Dr. Stuart Phillips' lab, who, if you aren't following him on Twitter, you need to right now, at MackinProf, at MackinProf. You need to follow him. He is one of the leading researchers in the world right now on protein metabolism and exercise science. Well, they looked at the anabolic response over 12 hours, feeding 3 different meal frequencies. I believe whey protein. The same total protein intake, okay? But 3 different meal frequencies. Either 2 meals of a large amount of protein, 40 grams, 4 meals of 20 grams of protein, of whey, or 8 meals of 10 grams of protein. Okay? So 8 meals versus 4 meals versus 2 meals over a 12-hour period. What they found was that the 4 meals spread out over 12 hours was superior to either 2 meals over 12 hours or 8 meals over 12 hours for anabolism. Okay? Guess what? The extremists are wrong. The truth is in the middle, like it usually is. Nothing is ever black and white. There's always a gray area, and typically that's where the truth resides. Okay, so I thought that was very funny, or very interesting, and just kind of encapsulates how important it is not to be an extremist on either side of a case. And I'm sure a lot of people, a lot of bros will be upset about that study. And then a lot of the lower frequency eaters, we'll call them, will be upset about that study. And they'll probably hate me for it. Well, don't hate me, hate the data, all right? But it's not just meal frequency. I mean, look at protein intake. You got people out there, well, you've got the RDs who say you only need 50 grams of protein per day. Well, yeah, to maintain nitrogen balance, you only need 50 grams of protein a day, but nitrogen balance is not equitable to muscle anabolism. Okay, it tells you very little about skeletal muscle anabolism. And then you've got people out on the other side who will say, bro, 600 grams of protein a day, because if a moderate increase in protein is good, then a shitload must be great. Okay? No, no, that is not the case. I mean, again, the truth is in the middle. I mean, the research has shown over and over and over again that you max out the anabolic benefits of protein probably at or just below 1 gram per pound of body weight. Now, it depends on your age and weight, and depends on your lean body mass, your training status, and, you know, the quality of protein sources you're using. But in general, that's a very good rule to shoot for. But you'll have people come out and they're trying to sell you some guru solution to all your problems. Say, well, the reason you're not gaining is because you're not eating 3 grams of protein a day. And it's a gimmick, okay? Or I'm sorry, 3 grams per pound of protein per day. And why do they say that? Because it's a gimmick. Because you sit there and you say, oh man, that's so extreme. That must be why I'm not, you know, making progress. Or people tell you got to do 3 hours of cardio a day. Man, that's so extreme. Maybe that's why I'm not making progress. No, it's a gimmick. Okay? It's like, even, you know, same thing with carbohydrates. You've got people, you know, you've got people out there promoting super high carb diets, you know, bro, I seen this IFBB pro who eats 700-800 grams of carbs a day. Okay? And then you've got somebody else who says, nope, no carbs whatsoever. We don't need them. Your body didn't evolve on them. You don't need carbs. Both are gimmicks. Both are wrong. It's all individualistic. Okay? It's the same thing with carb frequency or carb distribution. You know, you had people say, well, you know, you want to eat all your carbs before 6 p.m. because after 6 p.m. they're more likely to be stored as fat because you're going to be going to sleep, and then during sleep your metabolism slows down and they're more likely to be stored as fat. No, that's not the case. In fact, of the research I've looked at, and it's not conclusive by any means, but it looks like if you get a full night's sleep, your resting metabolic rate actually goes up a little bit during sleep, during your REM sleep. So that just doesn't hold weight, especially with there was a recent study that came out that looked at people who consumed the majority of their carbs after 6 p.m. and found that they actually had a better response to people who were consuming them evenly throughout the day. Now, the problem with that is now we have the opposite thing. Now we have people that say, well, you've got to consume all your carbs, you know, at night in your last meal because, you know, this study showed. No, what the study showed is that it's better to kind of have a one-time or two-time large bolus of carbohydrate and that shot of, you know, insulin response than kind of titrating it throughout the day. If you had put all those carbs in a breakfast meal, I think you would have gotten the same response. It's not an issue of time of the day necessarily, it's an issue of total distribution. And so I tell people, you know, I recommend putting a disproportionate amount of carbohydrate intake around your workout because that is the time when your body is going to be able to tolerate them best because you have upregulation of glucose transporters, those sorts of things. But again, I'm talking about maybe 30% of your total daily carb intake, you know, pre and post workout. You've got people say, nope, you got to do 50% pre-workout and 50% post-workout, zero carb the rest of the day. No, it's the same with this view of insulin. People view insulin as something that, you know, either, you know, insulin is anabolic, so you need to have, you know, 100 grams of dextrose post-workout. No. Research has shown that if you have a deficiency of insulin, you'll be anabolically impaired. Research has also shown that supraphysiological levels of insulin are anabolic. So people kind of took that kind of information and said, well, the more insulin, the better for anabolism. No. In the physiological range, okay, physiological, meaning what you can get from just eating, insulin really isn't anabolic. In order to maximize the anabolic response to protein intake or amino acids, you don't need a huge response of insulin. All you need is a very modest increase. There was a study done at the University of Texas where they looked at feeding 30 grams of whey protein after resistance training, either with 30 grams of dextrose or 90 grams of dextrose. And guess what? There was no difference in the anabolic response. So again, the truth in the middle. It's just very hard to get people out of that mentality because it's like, oh yeah, that's super fast digesting carb post-workout. Maybe that's why I haven't been making gains. No, it's not that. In most cases, it's time. It's just time. You haven't had enough time. I just find it very... I think I'm an extremist in the fitness industry in that I'm not extreme at all. All my recommendations are kind of moderate and kind of in the middle. I mean, you know, I don't have... my peak week stuff is so, for competitors, is so non-extreme that people have told me, man, your peak weeks are extreme. What? Like, yeah, you don't cut a bunch of water or you have people take diuretics or anything. It's like, well, how's that extreme? Well, I don't know. It just seems extreme because everybody else does it. So, again, you know, especially, again, going back to the insulin story, people view with, you know, so we talked about anabolism. People view insulin with fat loss kind of in the opposite direction. You don't want any insulin. No insulin. Because insulin stops fat burning. People have this idea of insulin that it's the fat loss boogeyman, that as soon as you eat any carbs whatsoever, you release insulin, and insulin shuts down fat burning everywhere in the body. No. That is completely untrue. It is a dose-dependent response, okay? Yes, if you eat carbs, you get an insulin response. But metabolism is not on and off switches, okay? It's not like when you release a little bit of insulin, it shuts down all fat burning everywhere. Metabolism is dimmer switches, okay? You always have all these things going on at the same time. Fat loss, like if you're in a fat loss phase and you are losing fat, you'll also be storing fat at the same time. It's just that the rate of fat loss is greater than the rate of fat storage. So yes, you release insulin and maybe you have a little bit more fat, you know, a little bit more fat storage, but it doesn't shut down all fat burning. That's nonsense. You're still burning more fat than you're storing as long as you're staying below those thresholds of carb intake, caloric intake, those sorts of things. Same thing with muscle building. People think, oh, you know, I got to totally stop all catabolism everywhere. And the fact of the matter is, protein breakdown and protein synthesis are always running. And when you're catabolic, you're still synthesizing muscle protein. You're just doing it at a slower rate than you're breaking it down. If you're anabolic, you're still breaking down muscle protein. You're just synthesizing at a faster rate than you're breaking it down. So again, metabolism is not on and off switches. It's dimmer switches. You're not shutting things down. You're just changing the area of emphasis for things. And that's why the truth in metabolism is always going to be in the middle somewhere. Okay? I encourage you guys, don't be extremists. You know, I talked about the dose response of insulin. You'll get people out there who don't have any concept of what a dose response is. You know, it's kind of like the whole artificial sweetener argument, and I know I'm going to get hate for this. People say, artificial sweeteners produce for methanol and formaldehyde, and that'll kill you. Well, yeah, it'll kill you in a high dose. You realize you get more methanol in a glass of orange juice or tomato juice than you do from a glass of diet soda? About, I think it's like twice as much. 4 times more aspirin than you are supposed to take can kill you, okay? But here you've got people who don't have any problem with taking, you know, medicines and those sorts of things. But, oh, heaven forbid we drink anything out of plastic because that has, you know, BPA in it, which is immediately going to crawl into my DNA and cause me cancer. It's all dose dependent, people. It's all dose dependent. Now, would I say that you need to be mindful of things? Yeah, sure. I mean, you know, mercury in tuna is a very real deal. I wouldn't recommend, you know, consuming more than is advised by the DRIs. But, you know, just because it has mercury, it does not mean it's going to poison you. You have to eat a lot of it. You have to go over the recommended dose. The devil is in the dosage, okay? So that's why, once again, the truth is always in the middle. You'll get people say, I don't eat any tuna because of the mercury. Well, you know, 1 or 2 cans a week isn't going to hurt you at all. You know, if you're talking about eating 20 cans a week, well, yeah, now you might have some reason to be concerned. So, again, I always tell people, try to avoid being a zealot, try to avoid being an extremist. Look at the data, okay? Show me the data, all right? That's what I always look at. And I'm always willing to revisit my points of view as new data comes out. But one of the things, if I can impress upon you guys, is that there's a lot of people out in the fitness industry who are trying to sell you gimmicks, okay? They're coming up with an extreme point. Take 40 grams of fish oil a day, or you can only eat organic meat from, you know, a cow that you grew yourself and, you know, with fertilizer that came out of your own butt. That, you know, I mean, it's just ridiculous, all right? Moderation. Moderation is key. If I can impress upon you that, okay? If you hear somebody use the following words, always, never, best, worst, if they're constantly using superlatives when they're referring to metabolism or things to do with nutrition and training, you can be pretty sure they have no idea what they're talking about. Or that they're shysters trying to gimmick you into buying something, all right? The truth is always in the middle somewhere. So do your research, avoid being an extremist, avoid becoming a zealot. Always ask, show me the data. Because science, whether you believe it or not, is still true. Thanks, guys. Hope to see you next time.